Welcome back, everybody. I'm so pleased to be with you once again. And once again, of course, on behalf of the Buddhist Association of the United States, the Chuanyan Monastery in Carmel, New York, and the Wuju Memorial Library, I'm pleased to be here with you for this 10th of 10, this first set of 10 classes of the Introduction to Pali. And I should just quickly mention, and I will do it hopefully at the end of this class, that this class, by popular demand, has been extended. And I was showing you that updated schedule on my screen. You will find it on the baus.org website. And so basically the plan is to have 9 more classes after this one, which will make a huge 19 number 19 of classes, with a 1-week vacation, which perhaps we all need to take a quick break, but we don't want to take too much of a break. We want to continue while it's fresh in our minds, and it's a big part of language learning, I think, to not just let it aside for a long period of time and then pick it up and then put it down and pick it up, and it's very hard to keep momentum that way. And so I'm very happy about that news. And so I think we'll start this class. We have a lot to cover. We'll start this class with a little bit, a very quick review of the Lesson 2 initial readings, which we covered in our last class. And so we spoke about several things. One of the crucial things we talked about was the idea of the equational sentence. The idea that the verb to be, the is, in Pali is often not required, and things can just be equated without including the is, which is not to say that there's no verb to be. There are 2, in fact, but it's just not always necessary. And we see that in this first verse from the Dhammapada. And the other thing I'd like to point out and stress is the agreement between adjectives and nouns. And as we've been saying, adjectives need to match the nouns they are describing in case, number, and gender. And we see that clearly here, too, in this verse. So the first line, Kicho Manusapati Labo. So first of all, notice that there's no verb in this clause, but there is an implied is in English, is. The other thing to notice is that Manusapati Labo, which we see here in the nominative singular, is matched in the adjective kicho. But in the second line, we have the word jivitang, which is life, but it's a neuter noun. And that is, of course, reflected in the adjective as well. And so that's why when we go down the line of these kicho, kichungs, they're switching to match what they are describing. Now, another thing I'd like to mention, because it's possible I perhaps misspoke, or at the least was not entirely clear when I explained this first line in terms of how it could be translated. I gave the translation of Glenn Wallace, which is, difficult is the attainment of a human birth. And we talked about how this word pati lubbo, which is very closely related to the verb lubbati, to obtain, to take up, to acquire. So if we were to just look at this very literally, on a very literal sense, manusapati labo, the acquiring of a person, or the acquiring of a human life. And people said, well, can't we say human birth, or human life, or human body? And I said, well, that's not what's in the Pali. But I didn't mean to say that that's not a possible way to translate this phrase. What I meant to say is that if we look at the Pali very closely, I tried to show what we see, but of course in translation we have to make it idiomatic in the target language. And so even in the Wallace translation, we have human birth. But the word birth is not in the Pali, but it's perfectly acceptable. I didn't mean to imply it was not. And so too with life. And perhaps even body could be okay, human body, because I think those things mean the same. And so that's the first thing I wanted to review or revisit in my revisiting. So that's the important grammar point here. And I thought we'd just look at one other quickly. Maybe we'll look at the third group of the second reading. And so here I'm going to read from Evameva ko bhikkhave tihi damehi samanagato bhikkhu ababbo adigatang va kusalang damang adigatang va kusalang daman pating katum. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here. And so first of all, we have Evameva ko. So notice ko is this sort of emphatic, this little kind of spice word, I think Venerable Bodhi calls it, which is often hard to capture in a sort of clear English translation. Ko and also he, H-I, he. Indeed, truly, it means something like that. And evang eva means also in the same way, or so too. So too indeed. And notice here our subject is a bhikkhu. This is the nominative singular. This is our short u noun. And it's being described with two adjectives, one on either side of it. So let's first work backwards, because what's important here is to understand which words in the sentence are grouped together or should be grouped together, and which words really are not grouped together, which might not be at first obvious just by the way it looks on the page. So this first adjective to the left, samanagato, it's endowed with, having, possessed of. So endowed with, when I say with, the word with implies the instrumental case. And so a crucial thing to know about samanagato, the adjective, is that what the person is endowed with, those endowments, those possessions are expressed in the instrumental case. And that's what we see here. Tihi damehi. So tihi is the number 3 expressed in the instrumental case. So please keep in mind that numbers also have to be declined properly. So tihi, well, of course, the number 3 is a plural, and it's also masculine, and this is the instrumental form. And damehi, we recognize this as a instrumental plural. So far we have a monk endowed with 3 things, or 3 qualities perhaps. And then we have this moment of equation. They're matching in case with this implied is. And notice, of course, what's on the other side of the verb, the implied verb, is matching in case. It's not the direct object of anything. And ababo is a negated word, which means not able to, or incapable of. And then we should go to our verb, which is expressed in the infinitive. The infinitive we recognize with this tung suffix, adigantung. So this is the verb adigachati, which has in this case the sense of to acquire, to get. And then what is that going with? What are the objects of the verb? Well, it's really damang, things. And that is described with 2 adjectives, which match, of course, in the accusative, because they are going along with damang. Unadigantam, which means unobtained, and kusalang is wholesome or skillful. So far we have a monk is unable to acquire unobtained wholesome qualities or things. And then this va, which I've passed over because it just doesn't work in English yet, should come now, va. So I've moved it over by one step. Or pating katung. So katung is another infinitive. It's the infinitive of the verb karoti, to make, to do, to create, to make pating, increase, to make increase. But idiomatically, it's probably better to say just increase. Adi gantang is obtained wholesome qualities. So once again, the infinitive is taking its object in the accusative case, and that is being further explained or modified by these two accusative case adjectives. And so I hope you grasp here the syntax of this sentence, which is on first glance a little bit perplexing. And a big part of the strategy to grasping it correctly is to make sure you understand how the words should be grouped together. So it's important to recognize what is the subject of the sentence, where is the verb, what are the objects of the verb, how is the subject being described with adjectives, and how are those matching in case. So I hope this is helpful. If there are any questions specifically about the initial readings of Lesson 2, I could take a quick one. If not, I can move on to something else. Okay, I see one question. This is fiacre, and I hope I've said it right finally in class 10 of 10. Class 10 of 10. I finally get it right. Wow.
Excellent. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So tell me, please.
So it's just a quick question about the vocabulary. So that there was one there which was anyatung, which what we have on the vocabulary, we have anyati as comprehends or discriminates, but when I look at your notes, you have against it you've ajati.
Where are you?
Okay, so where I would be is it's the third section.
The third section, the one we've skipped over. Yeah. Which number?
Okay, so I can see it there. So it's 336. So it's the atamanyatum. Yeah. So the very last word there.
Yes, I see. Okay. I should mention, by the way, that these numbers reflect the numbering system used by Venerable Bodhi in his translation, but I've noticed that they are different in the Sixth Council. So we sometimes see sort of a difference in opinion of how to number. That's a very minor point. So if you were confused in any way by these numbers because they didn't line up to Sixth Council, that is the reason. Okay, now specifically speaking to your point, yes, there seems to be two verbs that could be anyatung or ajanati. I think ajanati, I gave it because it's the more sort of fundamental form.
Okay. Yeah.
In fact, maybe I'll look it up in the dictionary. We can look at it together.
Great, yeah.
No, I spelled it wrong. I need one more long A.
Yeah, that's right. It's triple long A. Yeah.
So let's look at ajanati, which is not coming up, but anyat.
Yeah. No, it's beside anya.
Yep. It's not giving us as a.
Yeah.
So here, anyata, past participle of ajanyati, which we should see, but somehow, yeah. And QV means see that entry. But for some reason, Whoa. For some reason, I'm not getting that as an entry, so you might have to just take my
Mhm.
word for it for now.
Sure. Yeah. But the other word anyati doesn't show up in the Pali dictionary. So
Anyati. I think it does. I think I'm struggling to find it for some reason right now, but
that's right. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's fine. If it's
you'll
not,
have to
if
just trust
it's
me that
nothing to worry about, then
if you
that's
can find it there, ajanati and anyati are basically the same verb, but the more basic one would be this ajanati, which
okay.
is related directly to janati, which is an even more fundamental verb, to know,
To know.
which is
Okay. So
which
and
is
it's
related to the verb nya, to know, which is directly related to the English word gnosis or gnosis.
mhm.
So, okay,
Oh
does
yeah.
that? I hope that answers your question.
That's fine. Yeah. Great. Great. Thanks for that, Jim.
Okay. Okay, then let's move on to something else, which is talking a little bit more about the pronouns. And so we have an enormous amount of pronouns presented to us in this chapter. And basically, there are three. Now, in the previous classes, we've spoken about personal pronouns. That would be the pronouns referring to a person. That would be ahang, I, and mayang, we, and tvang, you, and tumhe, all of you, or you plural. And then the third person, which is so, which is he, or te, which is plural, they. But as I mentioned prior, the third person pronoun can also be a demonstrative pronoun. And I should mention that the first and second person pronouns do not take gender. So there's no feminine and masculine form of I. Whoever says the word I, they say ahang. They don't decline it for their personal gender choice, in other words. But that's not the case for the third person. And so that's what we see here in this box for third person pronoun. So if it's a masculine, it's he. But if it's a feminine, it's she, sa, she. And also, but what might be confusing is that, as I said a moment ago, that is not only a personal pronoun, but it's a demonstrative pronoun. So could mean that. So if I said so bhikkhu, it would mean that bhikkhu, not really he bhikkhu. That wouldn't make any sense. So it's that, in this case, it's functioning as a demonstrative pronoun. And so here we see all these variations because they can exist in masculine, neuter, and feminine. So tongue, very common. So tongue dhammang, that dhamma, matching in neuter because dhamma is a neuter noun. And this group, the so, is probably used for the pointing or the demonstrating of the furthest away of the objects being referred to. So deep, so bhikkhu would be a bhikkhu probably not even present. So it would be that one not currently in the room, so to speak. The next closer, in terms of this and that, which might mean this one, closer to us, would be the same set, but prefixed with an E. And that's what we see here in 2.12. And that's why they haven't given us the whole declension, because it's exactly the same, except with the E in front. And the E in front, as I said, gives the sense of a closeness. So instead of that, it's this. So aso, it's closer, atang and asa. And then there's a third set of demonstrative pronouns, which are here on the next page, which are the most close probably, ayang and imang, neuter. And so these, which are sort of a new set, and we don't even get the full declension yet, are really for the most like this here, this one, this very one, imang damang, this very dhamma. And so that would be the sort of general, of course this is not a hard and fast rule, but this is a generalization of how they are typically found in the canon. And that would be the differences. So we have so, eso, and ayang. They really mean the same, but they have a graduation of closeness when they're pointing to something. Now, that's all demonstrative pronouns. But they're also, in Pali, relative pronouns which form with the y in front of it, and they go in relative clauses, which we've started to look at already. And I think the easiest way to understand the difference is to see the actual texts which use them instead of trying to give abstract definitions. But the key to know, the thing to know, the important thing to remember is that the y is telling us that it's a relative pronoun. And so we have yo instead of so, for instance, or yasa instead of tasa. And then, of course, it's the same for the plural, ye, yesang, or yani. So that's a quick overview of these pronouns and how they are used in a general sense. I thought I might share with you something which kind of uses them in an interesting way, in a very famous piece of text, which I'm sure some of you will recognize. I have it here on my screen. I just want to check from one of my co-hosts that I am sharing my screen and you can see this text that says Atako. Diane?
Yes, it's
yes,
there.
Okay, good. Thank you for your help. Okay, so here, this is a very famous stanza, which you might recognize, and it has enormous power. It's actually not from the Sutta Pitaka, and to my knowledge, it's only found in the Vinaya Pitaka, in a section called the Maha section. And so here, it's the story, the little bit of quick backstory is about how the Buddha started the Sangha. And he started with a group of 5 monks. And one of those monks of the group of 5 was called Asaji. And he very quickly learned the Dhamma. And there were these 2 young men who were good friends, who were also out there in India searching for Dhamma, searching for teaching, searching for enlightenment. Their names came to be Sariputta and Moggallana, which I'm sure you all know. And so one day, Sariputta went off, and he came upon Asaji, and he kind of quickly surmised, by just looking at this man, that he knew something very special. And then he went up to Asaji at the right time. Of course, I'm abbreviating this story, and basically asked him to instruct him. And so we have this piece of text here. It says, Attako ayasma asaji sariputtasa paribhajjakasa imang dhammang pariyayang abasi. So Attako, then, ayasma asaji, venerable Asaji. This is a nominative. Abasi. So this is our verb basati, which we had from Pali Primer, in a past tense. Don't worry about that, but it just means he said. Imang, so here we hopefully recognize now this pronoun. Imang, dhammang. It's going with Dhamma, but it's also Dhamma pariyayang, which means a teaching or an explanation of Dhamma. So then the Venerable Asaji said this very Dhamma explanation, Sariputtasa paribhajjakasa, to, dative, the wanderer Sariputta. So here he is in the dative case. Because of course here Sariputta was not part of the Sangha, he was not a stream enterer. He was just a wanderer at this point. And so then basically Asaji says, well, I'm kind of a beginner at this too, but I'll give you a brief summary of what my teacher has told me. And sort of what's interesting is that Asaji at this point was in fact an arahant, a fully enlightened one, but he was a very modest person apparently. And so he recited this very terse poetic thing, which is Ye Dhamma Hetu Pa Bhava, Te Sang Hetung Tatagato Aha, Te Sancha Yo Nirodo, Evang Vahi Maha Samano. And so it means, notice here, and why I've sort of brought it up, because it has some pronouns in it. Ye, this is telling us it is a plural in a relative clause. These dhammas. And it's being described as hetu pa bhava. So hetu means a cause, an origin point. And hetu pa bhava means they come out of, they arise from, they proceed from a cause. And notice that it's matching because it's an adjective in the plural. And then tesang is the plural in the genitive. Of these, so I've put te in brackets just to remind us that tesam is a form of te, declined. Of these, the subject here, the tathagata, the subject is then, of course, the nominative, has said the cause. So that's in the accusative. And now in our third line, once again, we have tesang, and this is an interesting point that actually came up once before. We have tesang, which I'll put it back to sort of the original, and then cha, the word and. But tesang and cha have been joined together, and so this nasal has moved to a different nasal just for probably pronunciation's reasons. So it's tesang cha. And so, and of this, so this is our relative pronoun. Notice now it's yo because nirodo, which is the cessation, is a masculine. So yo, nirodo, ye, dhamma, they match. Yo, and they're stopping. That which is their stopping. So that which is yo, their nirodo is their stopping. Of these, which is, of course, hetung. Evang vadi mahasamano. So thus, the great recluse, we've had samana, teaches or has such a doctrine. Thus, the great recluse has such a doctrine, or thus, the great recluse teaches. And what happened, as you may know, is that just by hearing these very words, these exact words, Sariputta, it said that the stainless eye of Dhamma arose in him, and he became on the very spot a stream enterer. So these are very important words, and they have nice usages of relative pronouns and demonstrative pronouns. So ye is being finished with te, but here in the genitive, te sang. And then in yo again with the te sang. So this sort of completes the relative clause, the demonstrative. But that's just a quick aside. I thought it might be fun to look at that because it's such a famous set of words. And now we'll move into our further readings. Okay. Diane, anything I should know about from YouTube?
Just the connection is wonky tonight. Every once in a while you freeze, but then we get to hear you again.
I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know why. I don't know.
Someone wrote it might be because of the storm or hurricane on the East Coast.
Well, it might be. I apologize. If there's anything that has been cut out and you would like me to repeat, going forward at least, please let me know, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so here we are in our further readings. And notice here we have a demonstrative pronoun, imani, which has been joined together with the number 3 in the neuter. And so instead of saying tini imani, we have tini mani. And that's what this mark is there for, because it is telling us that this one of the I's has been dropped out and the words have been joined together. Notice that this is an equational sentence, and so there's no verb stated, but I've put the R. And so I hope when you saw the word nidani, you at the very least recognized it as a neuter plural, because it has the ani suffix. So tini is 3, matching now in the neuter nominative plural. Imani is the demonstrative pronoun in the same, these. So literally this says, 3, these, O monks, origins of kama for the arising. But putting that together into better English, we could probably read it, there are, that is not stated, but there are these, imani, 3, tini, nidani, causes for the arising, dative, singular, kamanang, genitive, plural, of kamas. In English, we probably wouldn't say kamas, but we can say of actions. Perhaps that would be a translation of kama, action. And now we have a interrogative pronoun. An interrogative pronoun asks a question, and it also needs to be declined, so it's matching. Are the 3? Because this question is referring back to these nidani, these origins or sources. Nidana, nidanang would be the nominative singular. This is also, by the way, the word which is used to describe those 12 points on the dependent origination. They are the nidanangs. And so, once again, there are these 3 causes for the arising of kama. What 3? Or which 3? Or probably what 3? Or even what are the 3? And so here we have, I'll read first, lobo nidanang kamanang samudayaya, doso nidanang kamanang samudayaya, moho nidanang kamanang samudayaya. So here we have what are called the 3 unwholesome roots, the akusala mula. And so these are unwholesome roots. You can certainly find much discussion of this in the suttas. And what are the 3 in Pali? Loba, which is often translated as greed, sometimes covetousness, which is a hard word for me to say. I should mention that this word is also sort of substituted with another word, which is raga. And they seem to be essentially synonyms, and they seem to be kind of alternated. They seem to be the same, raga and loba. So this is equational. So lobo, greed, is nidanang, an origin or a source for the arising of kama. Same grammar here. Dosa, now of course in the nominative, doso, hatred or anger or ill will, is a source for the arising of kama. And moha, or moho here, of course, in the nominative, masculine, singular, delusion or confusion is a source for the arising of kama. So that these three words are good words to know in Pali: lobo, doso, and moho. And they're typically presented in this order. I see a question. I'll take it quickly from Illa. Do you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have, like, Nidanam, doesn't it mean solution to a problem?
Solution to a problem. Not that I'm aware of, no. Certainly not in this case. Sorry.
Because I don't want to interrupt you or something, but in Sanskrit and Hindi, which is my native language, so we use it as a solution to a problem.
It may be so, but I'm afraid that that's not what it means here in this sentence, okay?
Okay, and also one more thing, raga isn't it more closer to dosho in meaning?
Hatred?
Like, yeah.
Not typically. Let me just explain dosa for a second. Thanks for your question. So the word dosa, actually, this is a case where there are two Sanskrit words that are resolving into one Pali word. So there's not that one. There's dosa with a dot below, which means a fault. And then there's dvesha, which also should have a dot below. I'm not quite sure how to do that right now, which means more like anger or hatred. And these two words have the same Pali word because this is how they resolve to one. But in this case, we're really talking about dvesha. That would be dosa. Okay. Let's go on. And so here we set up our relative clause and then followed by our demonstrative clause. So notice the use of the pronouns. Yang bhikkhave loba pakatang kamang lobajang loba nidanang loba samudayang tam kamang akusalang tam kamang savajang tam kamang dukkha vipakang tam kamang kama samudayaya sangvatati natang kamang kamanarodaya sangvatati. And so here I've put in green, and on my screen, the relative clause, which we have the Y marker. Yang, this is neuter, nominative. Yang kamang, that comma which. And then we have 4 adjectives which are matching in the neuter. Loba pakatang. So this is, don't worry too much about my annotations, but this word katang is coming from the verb karoti, and the root is this kar. It's actually a past participle. The thing to know is that it's done from or made from what is sort of attached to it on the left. So we can say it's done from greed. So that comma made from greed. And then we have loba jang. This is from the verb jati. The word jati. Born, so it exists as this ja. Born from greed. Loba nidanang. So here again, nidanang has greed as its source, its origin, its cause. And so really its origin or source. And then loba samudayang. It arises from greed. That comma which arises from greed. Now we have our demonstrative clause. Tam kamang. That comma. Right? So here the yang has been completed in a sense with the tongue. That comma is, this is equational, akusalang. Of course, this is an unwholesome kama. Tam kamang savajang, blameworthy. This kama is dukkha vipaka. Dukkha vipakang, it's matching, of course, which means it results in suffering. So here we have two words which kind of go together as a set, kama and vipaka, which are sometimes sort of confused in the English language world, at least, in referring to Buddhism. But in Buddhism, kama is the action, the doing, and vipaka is the result. So kama is not really the result. The result is called vipaka. And then we can continue here. Tam kamang kama samudayaya sangvatati. So remember from before, sangvatati means leads to, and it takes the dative aya here, right? It leads to the origin of kama, meaning more kama, right? That kama leads to the arising of kama, samudaya, the arising. And then you have a negated verb. That kama na sangvatati, does not lead to, of course, is data, dative, the cessation of kama. And so we have samudaya, the origin, and nirodha, the cessation. And so I hope that explains this sentence sufficiently. I hope it's clear now. So how these relative and demonstrative pronouns are being used. And I tend to like using the word which to help me understand it as a relative pronoun. It is not necessary. So that comma which, and then I would say here that comma. Okay, now I think I'll be looking for a volunteer who can help me with the next sentence. Who would like to help with this one? Okay, let's take Hui Lin.
Morning.
Hi, good morning.
I'll read.
Please.
Yang Pitui Dosa Pakatang Kamang Dosa Jang Dosa Nidanam Dosa Samudayam Tam Kamang Akusalang Tam Kamang Savajang Tam Kamang Dukkha Vipakam Tam Kamang Kama Saya Mudaya Samvatati Natam Kamang Kama Nirodaya Samvatati. So I've got that down as I got that down as that which, O monk.
Well, what is that which going with?
You mean that young? Sorry, action.
Kamang. Yes, it's going with kamang.
That action, O monks.
Yes.
Which is done out of anger or from anger, is born from anger.
Right.
Has anger as its origin.
That's nidanang. Good.
Dosa samudayang. That's anger arising from. Arise from anger.
That action that arises out of anger, right?
Yes. That action is unskillful or unwholesome.
Right. Tam kamang. So this is the demonstrative clause. Good. Go on.
And that action is, I translated this as blameworthy.
Yes, I think that's what I said. Blameworthy.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah. That action results in suffering.
Yes. Dukkha vipakang. Results in dukkha or suffering. Very good. Go on.
And that action leads to arising of karma.
Yes, tell me please, what case is samudayaya in?
That would be dative.
Yes, because sangvatati as the verb takes the dative case. That's the two. Very good. Go on.
And that action does not lead to cessation of karma.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well done. Okay, let's go on. We have Shirosha.
Hi. Which one do you want me to do? The next one or?
Yeah, moha.
Okay. Yam bhikkhave moha pakhatam kammang mohajang moha nidanang moha samudayam tang kammang akusalang tang kammang savajang tang kammang dukkha vipaka tam kammang kamma samudayaya samvatati na tang kammang kamma nirodhaya samvatati.
Mm-hmm.
So yam, so first we look at the subject, which is kamam. So yam kamam, so that kamma, marks, made from or produced from delusion.
Yes, moha, right.
And then and that kamma born from delusion.
Right, that's the ja. Right, good.
The next one. And moha nidanam would be as with delusion as their cause.
Mm-hmm.
And moha samudayam is arising from delusion.
Yes, good.
So then going to the next section. So tam kammam akusalam, that action or that deed is unwholesome.
Yes.
Tam kammam savajang is that action is blamable or blameworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Tam kammam dukkha vipakam, that action results in suffering.
Good.
Tam kammam kamma samudayaya, that action leads to the arising of more actions or more deeds.
Yes, more kamma.
More karma. And na tang kammam kamma nirodhaya samvatati, and they, so those actions do not lead to the cessation of deeds.
Very good. Very good. Yes, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have that clear. And so here we have this sort of restatement. Imani ko bhikkhave tini nidanani kamanang samudayaya. So indeed, maybe we can say for the ko. Here we have imani. So these are this is, I'm inserting, of course, the verb, which is necessary in English. The three causes or sources or origins, nidanani, in the neuter nominative plural, for the arising, dative, aya, of kamas, actions or deeds. This is genitive plural. Okay, now I'll take the next volunteer. We can have Christopher. Can you read us the next sentence starting with tinimani?
Tinimani bhikkhave nidanani kamanam samudayaya.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What is that?
These three, O monks, are the origins of, or the origins for the arising of kamas.
Right, so it's actually the same sentence we've had before. Interesting. Please go on.
Katamani tini.
Mm-hmm.
What are these three?
Right, and what, tell me about tini, just grammatically. What is the case and gender?
I think it's nominative and it's plural, so it doesn't carry
Of
a
course.
gender.
Well, it has a gender, which would be neuter.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Oh, yes.
Because it's matching, it's referring back to nidanani.
Okay.
Yes, it's certainly plural because three has to be plural. Right. Go on from alobo.
Alobo nidanam kamanam samudayaya adoso nidanam kamanam samudayaya amoho nidanam kamanam kamanam samudayaya.
Yes.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
So alobo is the negation of lobo, or so it's non-grasping, or
Not really non-grasping, non-greed.
Non-greed, right?
Go on.
Alobo nidanam.
So these are equated, right?
Yeah.
So there should be a verb there, is.
Okay, so non-greed is the origin
Good.
for the arising of kamas.
Very good.
Okay, so non-hatred,
Yes.
is the origin for the arising of kamas.
Yes.
Non-ignorance is the origin for the arising of kamas.
Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so notice here, it's interesting that we're still making kama, right? Even though these are the wholesome roots. That's one thing that's interesting. And also because, of course, maybe the point to stress is that any kama will produce more kama, so to speak. So the other thing to notice is that it's interesting that often in Pali, the wholesome counterpart of a negative trait is expressed as the negated form of it. So a strict translation, as our friend just did very well, would be non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion, which is interesting because you might think that we could plug in a whole new word for the positive, but that's just often not how it's done in Pali. I'm not sure what the sort of philosophical ramifications of that would be, but that's often how it's done. The positive is often a negated form of the negative, non-greed, and that's probably why you hear it very much referred to this way by people who say give Dhamma talks. But of course there are words that would describe. So non-greed might be referred to as jaga, generosity. Non-hatred would be something like metta, loving kindness or loving friendliness. And non-delusion would be wisdom, panya. So of course there are words in Pali, very nice words that do stand in as synonyms, but that's often not how it's expressed in Pali. Okay, let's go on a little bit. We now can try hitet, if you might, for us do the next sentence.
Yes. Yam bhikkhave alobha pakatan kama alobha jan alobha nidana alobha samudayam tam kamang kusalang tam kama anavajan tam kama sukha vipakan tam kama kama nirodhaya samvatati na tam kama kama samudayaya samvatati. Yan is the relative which bhikkhave, O monks, the vocative. Kama is the nominative, the subject. And then the equationals are aloba pakata, coming out of aloba, non-greed. I would say that the karma coming out of aloba, non-greed, and then another equational, aloba jan, has like aloba, non-greed as it's born out of aloba, non-greed. Aloba nidana has non-greed as the cause. Aloba samudayam has non-greed as its origin. Tang is the
Well, not so much as its origin. It arises, because its
arising.
origin would be nidanang. And so the
Nidanang.
difference is aloba samudayang would mean it arises out of non-greed,
Yeah,
or arises from non-greed.
non-greed. Thank you. Tang is like demonstrative, referring back to the above mentioned yang clauses. Tang karma, that karma, kusala is equational, is wholesome. Tang
Yes.
karma, that karma anavijang, not blameworthy.
Blameless, yes, or not
Yes.
blameworthy. That's fine.
Yes, thank you. Tang karma sukha vipaka, that karma has sukha, happiness as a result.
Okay.
Tang karma nirodhaya samvadati, that karma samvadati leads to the dative karma nirodhaya, the cessation of karma. And then na tang karma. So na is the negation. I will go to the verb samadati, and then the dative here is karma samudayaya, the arising of more karma. So this that karma does not lead to the arising of more karma.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay. And then we have, of course, the other two as well, which maybe we can skip over in terms of time, and maybe we should continue. Diane, any YouTube activity questions that I should know about? Any questions at all? Has everything I said come through okay?
Well, we've had to refresh YouTube several times. We do have one person who is feeling bad that they're not getting it immediately. And Pali, you just don't get immediately.
You mean getting it in terms of understanding it?
That it's moving fast, and they seem very puzzled about lesson 1 and 2. And I'm trying to remember, did you put the Kelly up on the Baus website?
Yes. Yes, all the answers are there.
Okay. Maybe they didn't find that.
Well, I don't know.
All right.
But if there's a specific question, I can take it. But it doesn't seem to be a specific question that it seems specifically puzzling. Okay. Well, then I guess I'll go on. I hope most people are understanding what I'm saying. Okay, so this would be our second set of readings. Panchahi bhikkhave dhammehi samanagato bhikkhu chavati na patitati saddhame. So here we have the number 5. And we can probably guess what case it is because we have the famous samanagato, which means that it leads to, endowed with, I'm getting confused, endowed with, which takes the instrumental. So panchahi would be the instrumental nominative form of pancha, 5, and dhammehi would be the instrumental plural. So here our subject, once again, is the bhikkhu. The subject is the short u nominative, singular, a monk, samanagato, endowed with 5 qualities, right? Panchahi dhammehi, O monks. Chavati, falls away. And then we have a negated word, verb, napatitati, which is related, as I've said here, to titati, does not stand firmly, or perhaps is not established, and here's our locative, in the true Dhamma. And so here we have our interrogative pronoun, katamehi, in instrumental. By what 5? Yep. Okay. And so we start here with our qualities. And I've tried to sort of explain them a little bit, but if it seems a bit much, don't worry about it too much. So here the word is saddha, which means either faith or confidence, and it is an adjective modifying bhikkhu, and so that's why it's in the nominative singular, and so the adjective form is this form, asaddho, even though the noun is a feminine, saddha. But here, because a monk is a masculine, it's not bhikkhuni in this case, it's asaddho. So a monk without faith or without trust, or maybe an undevoted monk, falls away, and he is not firmly established, locative, in the true or the good Dhamma. And now we have two words which are always taken as a pair, somewhat tricky to translate, hiri and ottappa, which here, of course, are the negative because this is why the monk falls away, so they have to be the bad things. But hiri and ottappa, which are often referred to as the guardians of the world, it's what sort of holds our society together in a moral sense. Very hard to translate. Hiri, often translated as moral shame. But I should point out that the word shame here doesn't mean one is ashamed, but rather the sense of moral shame is that with a sense of moral shame, doing unwholesome things would seem shameful or beneath one's person. One just wouldn't do such a thing. They wouldn't stoop that low. So that's hiri. I think another word that's being used for here is conscience. One has a conscience. And in an adjectival form, it has the ka, so hiri ka. So very hard to translate in one word, but basically the sense of it is that a monk who is without moral shame, or a monk who is without conscience, falls away and is not established in the true Dhamma. Now the next one is the ottappa, is negated form, and so ottappa is often translated as moral dread, which has the sense of that one understands and one sort of fears the consequences of an unwholesome or an unskillful action. So this sense of knowing that an unskillful action will bring unfortunate, painful results, having this quality of knowing that is ottappa. But of course, some people don't have that quality, and so they're anottappa or anuttappi. It's a different form. I've explained why here, and this page number refers to our Ger book when you can see the declension, but don't worry about it too much for now. Just know that it's an adjective, as I've said, describing the bhikkhu. So the monk without moral dread falls away and is not established in the true Dhamma. Next in our line of bad things is kusito, which means lazy. So a monk who is lazy, or a lazy monk, also falls away and is not established in the good or true Dhamma. And here we have dupanyo. So panya, as I've said, is wisdom, and it's prefixed with this dur, which is bad. But when it's put together in Pali, it's dupanno, and I would say that this P is probably here. This second P is kind of representing this suppressed R from the Sanskrit. So an unwise, one without wisdom, his unwise monk falls away and is not established in the true Dhamma. So those are these 5 bad qualities, and it's summarized here. Imehi ko bhikkhave panchahi dhamehi samanagato Bhikkhu chavati napatitati sadame. So a bhikkhu possessing, having these imehi, 5 panchahi qualities, that's all instrumental. O monks, bhikkhave, our ko is our sort of intensifier. Indeed, or certainly, the monk, here's our verb now. So again, this is the technique of understanding which words go together as a group and which words do not. So notice here when I've translated this sentence, I've done this section and I've left the rest behind for now. So I don't want to take Bhikkhu Chavati first and then try to fit in the rest. It would be difficult. So that is a sort of technique to understand that this adjective, samanagato, is going with this nominative. It is describing this nominative, bhikkhu, and then I can work backwards. And then I come to this verb, falls away, and this next verb, which is negated, napatitati, is not established in our locative, in the good or the true Dhamma. Okay, so now I would like to ask for some volunteers, and it would be lovely to have people who haven't yet spoken, but would like to give a shot of reading, being able to read out loud, and doing some translating of Pali for our next set, which are just the same, except reverse. So it shouldn't really present too many difficulties if you've understood what we've done so far. So far I have Irene. Irene, are you there?
Yes, Stephen.
Okay, great. Can you read from Panchahi Bhikkave?
Panchahi bhikkhave dhammehi samanagato bhikkhu nachavati pattitati sadame kattamehi panchahi.
So what does that mean?
O monks, bhikkhu endowed with.
That's right, samanagato. Good. And what case does that word take?
Instrumental.
Good.
With 5 things.
Good. Yeah.
Do not.
Or he does not.
He does not fall away.
Good. And
establish.
He is established. Good.
In the good Dhamma.
Very good. And just give me the next 2 words, please.
Which 5?
Yes.
Or what other 5?
Very good. Excellent work. Thank you. Thank you for doing it. Okay, then we'll continue with Jim.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. Let's do a couple of sentences together from Saddo.
Saddo bhikkhave bhikkhu na chavati patipati sadame. So saddo's faith.
Saddo.
So, saddo is faith. So, O monks, a monk with faith does not fall away. He is established in the true Dhamma.
Excellent. And do the next one.
Hirima, it was, Hirima.
What is the word based upon? Which Pali word? It's hiri. And do you recognize, are you familiar with the word hiri?
Oh, it's
Hiri.
It's like the moral sense or conscience, right?
That's right. Exactly. It's conscience or a sense of moral dread.
Moral dread. Okay. So, O monks, a monk with conscience does not fall away. He is established in the true Dhamma.
Yeah, it's not moral dread. It's moral shame. I'm sorry, I got a little confused. It's the sense of shame, not, that's the first one. And give me just the next one because it's the sort of counterpart of hiri, otapa.
That's the moral dread one.
That's the moral dread, yep.
Otapi bhikkhave bhikkhuna
Chavati.
chavati patitati
Patitati.
patitati sadami. And
Yeah.
so that's, O monks, a monk with a sense of moral dread does not fall away. He is established in the true Dhamma.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have Uyen.
Yes. I'll continue with Akusito.
Akusito, yes.
Akusito. Bhikkhave bhikkhu na chavati patithati taddamme. I think Akusito means working hard or diligent.
Yeah, literally means sort of not lazy, but I've also glossed it with the arousing of energy. Right, as you've said.
Yeah. A monk who works hard, all monks does not fall away and is firmly established into Dharma.
Yes, good. And do the last one.
Yeah. Panyava bhikkhave bhikkhu nachavati patithati saddamme. A monk who has wisdom, all monks does not fall away and is firmly established into Dhamma.
Exactly. Well done. Now just give us this last summary sentence too while you're at it, and so we finish off this sutta.
Yeah. Imehi ko bhikkhave banchahi dhammehi samanagato bhikkhu nachavati
Good.
patithati sadammeti.
Yes.
All monks, a monk who is endowed with these 5 qualities does not fall away and is firmly established into Dhamma.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you for your help. Okay, and that covers, as I see it, our entire Ger and Karuna Tilaka lesson 2. We've made it through 2 whole lessons, 2 whole chapters. And I think in the last couple of minutes, I'll ask if there are any questions about what we've covered, either here or on YouTube. I hope everyone is catching it as well as we can possibly do. Diane?
I think people are just enjoying the struggle.
Enjoying the struggle. Okay, let me ask.
Some are.
Okay.
For instance, I was trying to help someone who was having trouble with the declensions. And I think they were getting mixed up with a noun in its conjugations. They thought that samwatati was dative, but that verb itself is not dative. It leads to a word that is in the dative case.
Yes, that's a good point. So sangvatati is a verb, right? So let me go back here. Where can I find that?
Well, in particular, they were asking about, I think it's very early in the first lesson, number 3, and it's talking about the akusala dhamma biobhavaya vepulaya samvatanti.
So sangvatati or sangvatanti is a verb, and so verbs are not declined. Verbs are conjugated in tenses.
Yes.
But when I say it takes, what I mean by that is that the words that go with it are in, for this example, the dative case. But the verb, of course, a verb cannot be in a case. And it cannot be in the dative case, because a verb is not a noun or an adjective. A verb has to express a sense of time, right? So it's important And we've put up on the website a very, very basic chart, which I hope everyone saw if they were here from the beginning, which is important, that we made a distinction between declensions and conjugations and what gets declined and what gets conjugated. So I would refer people back to that table or that diagram to kind of refresh their minds of what should be done with what kind of word, we should say. Okay? Any other ones?
Oftentimes people aren't English speakers
Yes.
when they come to this class. So conjugation and declension, it might not be something they automatically understand. And
that is true.
They wanted to know about when you do decline a verb. There are times when the verb,
there's no declining of verbs.
When a verb becomes an adjective.
Okay. In other words, when a verb becomes a participle.
Thank you for that.
And when a verb is turned into a participle, it becomes an adjective, and therefore it can be, or it is, declined.
Yes.
Right. But that means it's no longer a verb. It's a participle.
But it took me 3 years to figure that out.
Well, I would refer you back to the definition of participle versus verb. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's hard to learn.
Okay.
So
well, we want to leave people on an upbeat note, and I think we should finish here. And I'll ask Regina for any announcements. And before that, I'll reiterate my announcement, which is that this class will be continuing with a 1-week gap, which I hope you will all use to refresh and revisit what we've covered so far. And if you're not sure about the basic terminology, this week would be an excellent time to go back and look it over again. And the dates of all the classes, which are following this very exact schedule with the missing week, are all on our website, the baus.org website. And so then I'll pass it now to Regina for any final announcements.
Hello, everyone. So I just have to say that once again, this was an awesome class. I just get so inspired when I hear you all reading in Pali and then translating it. It's just as like, whoa, we're getting like these amazing people who are really catching on. And Diane and the people who are struggling, listen, that's part of the process. So keep going uphill like you're riding your bicycle. It gets harder and harder and harder. But then when you get to the top of the hill, you rest and then you go down the hill. That's where the fun starts. It's all part of the process.
Being frustrated and angry is actually an unwholesome mental quality, not a wholesome one.
No, right. But it's part of the process, and I understand it's difficult. So I do have some announcements to remind everyone that every Saturday, Bhikkhu Bodhi has Sutta study. He starts at 9:30 a.m. with a meditation, and then after that goes on to discuss the sutta for the day. And you'll find this information once again on the BAUS website, baus.org. Also, just want to remind you of the virtual annual Abhidhamma retreat. So if you're interested in learning Abhidhamma with none other than Bhikkhu Bodhi, I encourage you to sign up as soon as possible. You'll find that on the website. Last but not least, if you enjoy Stephen's instruction, and I know I do, you can hear more. So Stephen and I co-teach Sutta study every Sunday and Thursday evening, 7 to 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. And you can get information on that from our website at suttaandthecity.com. And I just want to encourage you all to keep coming back, because from an outsider looking in, you are all doing great.
Thank you. And I would just like to mention one final thing, which is that if you have found these classes to be beneficial, which are of course offered entirely free of charge, but you would like to make a donation to the monastery, that is Chuanyan Monastery, that's not me, but I'm talking about Baos or Chuanyan Monastery, there you may do so. We encourage you to do so because it's through donations that these things are able to exist in the first place. And there is a Dana donation, charitable giving button on the top of the baos.org website. I think it's a red button on the top right. And so I'll leave you with that. I thank you all very much for your perseverance, your fortitude, your patience, and I ask you all to please come back after a week off and join me again to continue on and ask questions if you're not sure about things. So thank you all, and I hope to see you again. Bye now.
Thank you.
Okay,
bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody use the week to catch up if you feel lost.
Keep studying.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
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 You guys are great.
Bye.